What happened in the sprint
And qualifying
for the United States Grand Prix? Hello everybody and welcome back to the B1 podcast with Matt and Tommy. You are live from our Austin kitchen because it's the only place that looks remotely okay in terms of lighting. This house has no lights, it feels like. But that's not what we're here to talk about, Tommy. We're doing an overall encompassing podcast today because we were at the track, so we couldn't do a sprint one and then a qualifying one.
Yeah, I can't believe you didn't make a joke about cooking in some sense.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of science is in there, cooking.
Yeah.
Like you did earlier in the sprint. Right.
Wow. But yeah, let's start off with the sprint because that was the first thing we saw today. And what a sprint it was. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's always a little bit difficult, isn't it, to get a full grasp when you're at a race of exactly what's going on, especially when the screen you're watching freezes and then the other side of the screen then unfreezing was Lando being overtaken into turn one.
Absolutely loved the sprint. I actually spoke to my parents as well to see if they got, because they're watching from home, because like you say, you always get that little bit of bias at the track and you enjoy it more, but apparently it was awesome and yeah, it really was. So much overtaking and God, F1's in a good place, isn't it? So much action.
Lots to talk about. Let's start with the first question from P1 Patreon member Alan Enderpay. Did Ferrari fire the wrong driver?
I had to put it in as the first question.
Yeah.
Because everyone sent it.
Is your burner account Alan Enderpay? That's what I want to know, because you've asked me this so many times. And once again, Sainz does a fantastic job. Charles did a decent job. And it's, did Ferrari fire the wrong driver? No, and I will continue to say no. But what I will say was that Carlos was phenomenal today in the sprint. He drove like you sort of should in the sprint, right? He just sent it. He went for it hard at the beginning. He got past Charles, which, I mean, that battle in itself was brilliant. Amazing. To watch, side-by-side action. And the beauty of what COTA brings to racing really came out between those two in particular, where there are so many corners where you can just fight and keep going. And as well, they didn't come together. Again, still, the two Ferrari drivers, very close, but they both know how to race wheel to wheel.
They do, yeah, it's very true. It's another moment of, there's only 6 races if you include this one tomorrow, with them as teammates. And when they first got announced as teammates, we're like, well, they'll definitely crash at some point. They have produced some of the best wheel-to-wheel racing between teammates I think we've seen from a teammate pairing. COTA just delivers with the wheel-to-wheel racing. The fact that you've got like a long DRS straight, and that's not actually where a lot of the overtaking happens. It's the dive bombs. And it's been shortened, but it's the dive bombs into the very slow technical part of the circuit, which normally is quite, I don't normally like on a lot of circuits, but this one allows you to essentially make a very late lunge, and then the other person gets to switch back. Oh, it's just awesome, and those two put on an amazing show.
They certainly did, and Carlos didn't end there either. He managed to get Lando on the final lap, which I think was more on Lando just snatching a break and making a mistake, as opposed to Sainz doing anything particularly
questionable defending again.
Fancy. Or that was on Charles a little bit later on.
Oh, he did it on Carlos as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was the investigation on Charles though?
I think it was both.
Both?
It just general erratic driving.
Fair. Well, he got away with it, did Lando. This is what I mean about. So what was actually investigated? What actually happened? But again, Carlos getting through on Lando. It was surprising just in general to see the Ferraris be that close in race pace to the McLarens. Kind of gives me a little bit of hope for Ferrari tomorrow, and also for Lando if he's not getting involved in too many tussles. I think he made a couple of mistakes out there as well, did Lando, but we'll get on to him. Ferrari, they looked rather solid in race pace, considering they've brought no upgrades.
I think it's very close. I think it's very exciting for the main race. Normally we say that it's a bit of a spoiler, which it can be. But if anything, I think it just shows that no one is there to get away. One thing that, being back at a track, now we're in this kind of period where Formula One is just so damn good, even more than it normally is amazing. It was noticeable just like how close the pack was lap after lap after lap.
You do wonder if the Ferraris actually worked together, I think they would have both of them got through on Lando quite easily by the looks of things. And then you even wonder how close they could have got to Max, because at the end of it, Sainz finished 3.8 seconds behind Verstappen. So
maybe
that's where I'm getting my serious delirium from slightly, that things might turn out good tomorrow. But we shall see. Next question, N33_Emma. Did Matt's heart stop when Charles almost hit Lando? I mean, yes, it did. Not necessarily, because again, it's a sprint. It's not a huge amount on the line. It was for P3. So obviously on one side, I'm like, Charles, please don't smash the car. But also for the championship, if Charles smashes into the back of Lando and neither of them finish, that's a much bigger swing in terms of the championship standings between Max and Lando. So it was so close. What I will say is that the investigation that went on around this erratic driving or brake checking or whatever, all this sort of stuff, I saw absolutely nothing wrong with what Lando did. He was covering the inside, but maybe not as aggressively as, it wasn't the most obvious thing he was going to cover the inside, but then he did. And it wasn't, in my opinion, it wasn't too erratic that it was a swipe and Charles had to get out of it. I think it was more the case that Charles just didn't expect Lando to cover the inside, and perhaps that goes back to when Charles left the door open for Carlos, and that's how Carlos managed to do 2 dive bombs on him earlier in the sprint.
Interesting, because I do not agree.
Interesting.
I think that Lando's driving, in a weird way, I think it is good that he didn't get a penalty, because lots of other drivers do it, but I think his driving was kind of basically like what Max did to him in Austria. Like the way he's and the way he was positioning his car, particularly with the Charles Leclerc incident, he knew, he braked and moved over under braking. And I think, in a way, I think it's what Lando has to do, because I think I've been critical of him for maybe being a bit soft with his wheel-to-wheel racing, and he needs to start fighting people harder, which is what he's doing. Definitely puts you in a risky position. His move was basically, if he's risking being crashed into the back of, but if he doesn't, he's definitely keeping the position, because he's moving and basically just completely stopping. He anticipates that Charles is going to go there because everyone was dive bombing into that corner, and he didn't have a great exit. I think any other season or whatever, it probably would be a penalty, but I'm glad they didn't penalise him, but based on what we've seen in the season and just letting people hard race, which is exactly what Max did. I think Lando's driving was more like a Max Verstappen, very on the limit of what you're allowed to do, but that at the end of the day is what he should be doing if he wants to win a championship. Okay,
so just to clarify, you think that should have been a penalty, the double left-hander Lando incident?
I think it was a very questionable move. I know you were saying that you thought it was fine. I don't think it was fine, but based on the rest of the season, and because Max didn't get a penalty, did he, in Austria, for example? I think that they were right to let it go, but I think if he'd done that in another few laps again and again, he would have got a penalty.
I'm just going to check that Max didn't get a 5-second penalty in Austria. Yeah, 10-second penalty.
In the moment of crashing, I forgot that Max. So yes, Lando should have got a penalty.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was very questionable driving. I completely forgot Max did actually get a penalty.
We're going to watch it live back right now. So we're watching Charles right in the rear diffuser of Lando.
Yeah. He's moving over to the left and basically braking so early to stop him from.
Well, he's braked early, but that's Lando's decision, right? He's not there is a movement there, but I think that's also Charles anticipating that Lando's going to go a different way, and that's why we've had such a dramatic reaction. I'm not saying that Charles is at fault here at all.
No, I don't think Charles is 0% fault. I don't think Charles. I think it's a miracle that Charles actually doesn't crash into the back of him. I think it's all on Lando. If they crashed, it's Lando's fault, 100%, in my opinion.
Anyway, that was interesting. Wow, look at me and Tommy disagreeing. Unbelievable. And then Hamilton, I think, said he had something broken on his car in the sprint, which was then fixed for qualifying, but maybe not.
Was it
And he finished P6. And then both the Hasses, by the way, oh my goodness me, P7 and P8, scoring double points in a sprint is ridiculous. And I think the final thing, because we don't want to make this podcast 12 hours long, because we still got to talk about main qualifying, was the small little battle that we saw between Perez and Tsunoda. And I felt like Yuki was definitely trying to send a message there.
He was. Not that Christian Horner would have been looking, but yeah, Yuki definitely was driving like it was, look at me, I'm racing the other Red Bull and doing a fantastic job against him.
Right, let's move on to qualifying then, shall we? And begin with Q1, where the bottom 5 were Albon, Colapinto, Bottas, Hamilton and Zhou. Well, let's start with the first question on this segment. Chucky234410, what's happening with Lewis Hamilton? I mean, 19th. 19th is ridiculous. I think that Hamilton was, standard. When Hamilton has a terrible session, of course, he's going to be quite short with the interviewer. He was incredibly short, I think, after this one. Looking forward to next week already. But to be knocked out in Q1, out-qualified by Bottas, he thought that the car was fixed. Going into qualifying, it was a scruffy lap. Let's put it. We have to. When you look at what happened, he locked up into turn 12, ran wide. I think he got that lap time deleted, and then the other lap that he had wasn't good enough for anywhere near the top 15. So it was a scruffy qualifying session for Hamilton as well.
It was incredibly scruffy. I mean, Hamilton's not had a great time of it at qualifying. He said it himself many times. But this is the lowest of the low, being out-qualified by a stake is basically the ultimate insult, really, isn't it? So, yeah, really poor qualifying from Hamilton, and he was already kind of writing off his chances. We joked about the fact that in the sprint, Russell and Hamilton were together on track. Still wouldn't surprise me if they ended up together on track by the end of the race tomorrow, even though he's all the way down in 19th, because I do think he'll fly through the field. So
we shall see. Other things to talk about, Williams being knocked out in Q1. I think Colapinto, of course, getting through to SQ3, don't forget, literally yesterday, wasn't able to out-qualify Albon this time round, but Williams just looking like they were lacking something today compared to what they saw only yesterday. And I think it's similar though with some teams, right? Like with Mercedes, we saw a shift of pace as well. It's not like it's some teams learn more from that first day going into the next one.
I think it's just a sign of just how amazingly close Formula One is at the moment. The field spread is so close and closer than it's ever been, that I think in previous years, I know we've had the sprint for a long time, quite a few years now, and the biggest argument was, well, you're just going to get exactly the same result. But I don't think that's the case anymore, because Formula One is just so competitive and the gaps between every team is so small that you can have a qualifying session literally one day later at exactly the same circuit, and you can be out in Q3 one race and the next one, out in Q1 and then through to Q3.
Absolutely. I also want to show you these, if you can see them on my wrist right now. Some wonderful P1 fans have given us these over the Austin weekend. Just want to say thank you so much. I've even got a Zhou bracelet now, which is awesome. It doesn't say 4 out of 10 either on the bracelet. Q2, the bottom 5 on this session were Tsunoda, Hülkenberg, Ocon, Stroll and Lawson. Obviously with Lawson has a 60 place grid penalty, so he was just trying to help Tsunoda with his slipstream. And I love how Yuki came over the radio and was like, Lawson's doing it the wrong way. Okay, I'm getting dirt on my tyres. This is how you should do it. But Yuki, unfortunately, just missing out going through to Q3. The big one, I think, to talk about was Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg absolutely had the pace to get through to Q3. He lost, and I love this, by the way, from Formula One, the little graphic that came up, time lost.
Yeah,
that sort of stuff is brilliant because it gives you an idea of, I guess, Hülkenberg's optimal first sector or whatever it might be. Said that he lost 0.4 of a second in turn 1, and that's absolutely the difference between him making it through and not.
Has been amazing this weekend, has to be said. Look at the sprint as well. We didn't really speak about them in the sprint, but amazing from them again. So they are looking like probably the best car after Formula A, and now Aston Martin might not even be in Formula A anymore.
Okay, moving through to Q3, where the top 10 was Norris, Verstappen, Sainz, Leclerc, Piastri, Russell, Gasly, Alonso, Magnussen and Perez. I didn't quite absorb that Perez qualified 10th. Before we get into that, Polski Polak _2. What do you think the order would have been if George didn't crash at the end? Now that is a fun game to play. Of course, Max Verstappen was flying out there, had an insane first sector, was 2.5 tenths up on Lando through there. You have to think that Max was going to take pole position away from Lando. Would have been close, I think. I think the McLaren maybe was slightly quicker towards the end of the lap, but still, I think Max had a little bit too much time in hand. He was going to get pole, essentially, was Max. Other than that, obviously my Charles Leclerc delirium is going to say he would have got P3.
But they fired the wrong driver.
Was that?
Fired the wrong driver, they didn't, of course.
Yeah.
Checking. I think Max would have got it. Of course, I would say that, but he was looking very, very, very quick indeed. And Max definitely left something on the table going to that corner. I mean, turn 19, which is where the track limits is so marginal. We've seen it many, many times. And Lando, through luck or judgment, kind of drifted around the corner, and the back end was out of track limits, but his front wheel was on it. He flew through that corner, and whereas Max looked very tentative, it almost, you could never know unless he actively said it, but just from the way he drove, it almost looked like it was right, I need to actually get a time on the board and then I'll go for it in the second lap.
Do you really think Max is a banker lap kind of guy?
I don't know.
I think he just
understeered, maybe.
I think it looks quite underwhelming when a driver misses the apex there because they have to get out of it. So then they're just understeering a little bit, has to stay on the track. And then at that point, obviously, he's going, well, I need to keep this in the white lines. But I reckon he lost 2 tenths just from that corner alone.
He would have been, I think he would have been pole, but we'll never know. And
we won't.
Thanks to Russell, even as a
big
fan, it's better for the championship.
Yeah, and that was a big old spin, wasn't it, from George in the penultimate corner?
Oh, massive. Speaking of turn 19, he was never making that corner. He really sent it in. That's the thing. There's a lot of time to be gained at that corner. But
there is.
Not if you go backwards into a wall.
Yeah, and it just snapped away from him as well. Must have just taken a little bit too much speed through there and lost the car. So, yeah, sad for George, but then happy for Lando, I guess, because it was he was helped in getting pole position, and I think that will make the race a lot more interesting tomorrow. It seems as though Max does have a little bit more race pace than the rest of the field, which we're back to sort of pre-Spain now, aren't we? Where we truly think that Max might have the fastest package, driver and car. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what the race has in store tomorrow.
It's set up very nicely because, like I mentioned in the sprint race, Lando is seemingly more inclined now to get his elbows out, and he will have to do it against Max because he cannot afford Max to beat him in this race. He needs to start eroding that gap, like we say every single podcast. Max is now back, it seems, with good pace. Whether it's just a flash in the pan here at Austin or they've found something, are McLaren going to rue the fact that they didn't make the most of it while Red Bull Red Bull was so poor? But Lando's still got a chance to do it. He's on pole. And now we get to see, because we had a little taste of it in Austria, but in a weird way, they've not really raced each other since because the Red Bull's fallen off, and even the races where Max has finished second to Lando's won by 20 seconds, which, famous last words, but I would be amazed if that happens again based on just how close it was in qualifying and how Max seems a lot quicker. So.
Absolutely. And a quick shout out to Pierre Gasly, P7, looking like he's driving a McLaren with that very strange Alpine livery that I'm still not over when I see it just flashing past me. That's a McLaren. No, that's an Alpine. But P7 with the upgrades, it's worth, of course, highlighting once again. And I mean, what an upgrade that has been for Alpine. Like, goodness gracious me. Getting ahead of, obviously, Perez, Hamilton having a shocker and starting 7th, which is really important for Alpine to try and actually score some points this year.
Yeah, Gasly looked really good. And after their kind of woeful start to the year, they kind of got back into being the top team in Formula A for a few races. It kind of feels forever ago now. and they were picking up a lot of points, and you kind of thought, oh no, they are going to finish maybe 7th in the Constructors' Championship, and then since then they've really fallen off. So yeah, the fact that Gasly are showing those upgrades are working well.
And that is it. Thank you everybody for watching and listening. This little compressed, put together double podcast in one. I hope you've enjoyed it. We'll be doing our Austin live show tomorrow in downtown in Emos. So there's a few tickets left. If you're in Austin and you want to come along, you're more than welcome. 9 p.m. start. Cannot wait for our final show of the tour. It's been unbelievable these last couple of weeks. The support that you've shown it truly means the world to us. We'll see you tomorrow for all of our usual stuff as always, and we'll see you very soon. Lots of love. Bye.
Bye.